Very warm welcome to all of you. Let me be very brief to say that why we are here in a session that's actually called Silicon Valley for Solar. Why Silicon Valley and why about artificial intelligence? Today we are in a world, over next couple of years, we'll see the world of energy and AI get completely intertwined. And we are also seeing that especially if we go to distributed renewable energy, the foundational element of digitizing distribution is now essential, not a luxury anymore. Because if you cannot digitize distribution business, a distribution company cannot know how much of renewable energy is flowing back, how to actually manage the grid, and a lot of distribution companies unfortunately mention DRE as a little bit of a villain, but actually they're good for the system. So we felt it was essential. Why Silicon Valley? Because it's a need for an integrated approach. What are the elements of integrated approach? First, as you will see from a bunch of different aspects of the value chain, whether in generation, transmission, distribution, and investment, what are the different aspects of AI products or technology products that are important? We are also launching in International Solar Alliance, which some of you might know is a treaty-based organization of 125 countries, largest multilateral institution headquartered in India. We have 17 Star C centers, which are centers of excellence in countries, and we are launching an ISA Academy, which is an AI-based learning platform to bring everyone together. So that's, I think, the another pillar beyond the products. Third is startups. You will hear more so as well, but we have funded 70 startups, 20 in Africa, 20 Asia Pacific, 20 Latin America, 10 in India, as the engines for getting the disruption for a lot of this Silicon Valley as well. And finally, we also believe on interoperable standards, because the world as 125 countries needs to have common standards. So that's the vision by which we will eventually have a physical infrastructure for Silicon Valley for solar, but we are starting with a lot of virtual services. It was announced in our last assembly, but we are in the process of launching real services, which you will be hearing from us on a real-time basis. I will now jump to the esteemed panel we have. Let me begin with you, Arun. As somebody who's managing transmission projects on tariff-based competitive bidding, what are the challenges in managing decarbonization? But more importantly, since we are talking about Silicon Valley, what are the implications for AI which can be used by an international organization like us?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us on this platform. I think you have rightly picked up this theme that we have to be the Silicon Valley of solar. There's so much happening in the country. And to me, we have done about $9 billion of developmental projects both in Brazil and India. So we understand how transmission is becoming central to the whole decarbonization journey. I have been saying this, that there can be no transition without transmission. I've been saying this many, many times. And the reason is because a decarbonized economy has to be electrified economy. There's no other way. As a country, we emit about 3.8 billion tons of greenhouse gases. And they are primarily from three sources. The coal-fired plants is one. Second is the commercial and industrial. Third is your transportation. Now, renewable is picking up big time. We have seen how Badla Park and Khavdas are picking up. But bringing this energy, the green electrons, to the consumption center is what is the key to it. And it's not easy. Transmission are linear projects and they have their own peculiar problems that we face. Therefore, transmission lines are central to replacing the fossil fuel. That is one. Second, on the same thing on the C&I. There's a lot of effort happening. I think most of these zinc producers, the smelters for aluminum, the copper guys, they all want to have their captive plants, renewable plants, so that they can shift very quickly onto renewable stuff. But again, the lines, the transmission line is the key here. How do you bring these green electrons to these locations? And this is about 30% of the emission coming from C&I. Last one is the transportation sector. So these three sectors constitute about 80-85% of the greenhouse gases emission in the country. Third is the transportation sector. There is so much of demand as it picks up as we move forward on the electrical vehicles. Ability to bring green electrons into the city, say in Mumbai or in Goa. I did a project in Goa. trying to connect Karnataka to Goa. And similarly, many such projects from hydro or from Khavda or from Badla into the centers. Bringing clean energy into the city center is another challenge. And therefore, transmission lines have to adopt new technology, which is the upgrade and upgrade of these existing corridors. So there's a reason I say a decarbonized economy has to be an electrified economy. There can be no transition without transmission. And all these sectors, which is about 85% of the greenhouse gases emission in the country, if they have to be replaced, it has to be eliminated, then we have to build lines across all voltage levels. That's so critical. And more so, the onus of decarbonization sits with the more mature technologies like the REs, the high voltage, the battery systems, and the nuclear and the EHVs, all this. Because the other pieces, which is the carbon capture, the green ammonia, the green hydrogen, have yet to mature. Therefore, the onus sits on the transmission and the technology around this for making this happen. In terms of, you asked me how, what role and how ISA can help in propagating this. I think there are 3-4 clear areas where I think ISA can help. One is the Indian transmission and the grid model is very unique in the world. We are a national grid. The whole country is connected from Assam all the way to Rajasthan and to Gujarat and Jammu to Kerala. We are all connected. You produce in one part of the country, you can pick up, consume energy in any part of the country, which is very unique. I think this is a model which has been implemented using PPP model. We have been, for many years, we have been discussing PPP models. But PPP model through a TBCB, tariff-based competitive bidding, has been the most successful. I think there are about 4 lakh crore of bids have already happened on this model. And every year is about 100,000 crore of bids are happening on the similar model. Therefore, this is the model which has to move to other countries as well. That will be really good. Second is, I think the TL developers and the solar developer can work very closely with each other. The right-of-ways issues can actually be very closely cleared and opened up so the lines can happen on time. Because you can create a solar park, but if you can't create a transmission line, then the solar park sits idle. And I think yesterday I was in a meeting with Honorable Secretary and Honorable Minister. The issue was exactly this. The solar plants have come up and they're facing massive curtailment because the lines are not there. So there's massive learning. ISA can help propagate these learnings to other countries, all the countries where you operate. That is one. And second is, transmission is absolutely central to the whole decarbonization journey that we are on.
Thank you. I think the question of how solar storage and transmission are a bundle is a very important part that we are taking to all over the world. And obviously, India's regulatory mechanisms of TBCB, price discovery, 30-year contracts are great. And also, I think briefly you talked about technology, where transmission, not only through SCADA, but on real-time grid modernization is really the future. Thank you for those. Abhishek, it's been wonderful that we have been talking and working together on aligning the India energy stack on which you are a core member, along with the global AI mission as part of the Silicon Valley. Tell us a little bit, what are the most foundational elements in a distribution company for having interoperability, because so many exchanges, so many applications are coming, and what has been your experience?
Sure. Thank you, Ashish and ISA for this wonderful session, and very thematic, very pertinent to the topic we are talking about. In India, the distribution licensee as defined by the Electricity Act has 3 functions. One is system operation, second is network operation, and third is complete customer retail side. So there is no separation of carriage and content. So therefore, in that way, we are a holistic retail cum network operator. Unlike countries like, say, Europe, where you have a separation of carriage and content, there is a DSO concept or archetype, and then you have a retailer archetype. Now, as far as we are concerned, any DSO or any DSO plus retail would have fixed number of pillars in which we operate. One is, of course, our complete asset base, and the asset operation, maintenance, predictive elements out of it. Then apart from asset, the entire network as a system, the system operation, and therefore the capacity cost of driving the system approach, that is CAPEX part. third is, of course, what is the kind of content that way, because we are responsible for power purchase agreements, long-term, short-term buy, especially also the DRE aspects where we, take in a lot of DRE, net metering or gross metering or net billing, whatever the different models are there. And finally, we are the touch point with the customers. So we are the biggest retail service providers, for example. So our customers would also be the customers of Amazon or telecoms or IGL or GGL, whatever it is, wherever we are. So in this context, the data volume is humongous. There are certain defined data capturing softwares, like for example, SCADA, which is only up to 11 kV, for example. There you have outage management systems, geographical information systems, automated meter reading. Now it is called AMI, Advanced Metering Infrastructure. Then you also have now ADMS and then DERMS, basically. Now all these systems, though they are defined, I mean, if you talk about likes of GE, Schneider, Siemens, Hitachi, ABB, all of them have their different products. But the same data is being organized in different formats, different archetypes. The same, like for example, electricity bill, the billed units would be named differently in different databases and different data sets. So that diversity, and now we are talking about collating the data together on a single India energy stack or digital platform. India energy stack is nothing but a digital highway for electricity, seamless flow of electricity. It's a platform enabled to be, onboarded by any and every stakeholder, including generators, transmission companies, distribution companies, consumers, technology service providers, OEMs, everyone. So that is the vision of IES. So the need for strengthening and organizing the data within, which we call, right now there is a committee which has been formed. We are mandated to come out with a output report within a month, just formed 2 days ago. The idea is to deliberate upon something we call electricity data model. So how do you define different data models within a distribution utility? Or if required, there is a need to define the overlapping cover or wrapper, because the underlying diversity would still be there. SCADA in UP, SCADA in Delhi, SCADA in Rajasthan will remain. We are not going to replace it. But then to talk, all of them talk seamlessly to each other, you might need a wrapper. And that is where the electricity data model is there, which is going to define in what format the data can and should be stored, what are the major archetypes of the data. And then as a part of the IES, the APIs through which these going to communicate with each other. DERs, how the DERs are distributed energy resources going to communicate with the distribution systems, OMS, DERMS. There are typical standards which are defined, but then there are certain customized APIs need to be. Like for example, we are working on a national level, as you mentioned, Global AI Summit next month, a P2P or digital twin. So when you talk about a P2P or a digital twin at national level, so it's a virtual power plant at a national level. So the DERs in Rajasthan, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Delhi, Karnataka should talk to each other and should talk to their respective DISCOMs, SLDCs, RLDC, NLDC, wholesale exchange like IEX, and even the local P2P markets. So all these things would require a harmonious, synergetic organization of the data. Just like in chemistry, you used to have UPAC naming system, IUPAC, right? So in our school days, we used to study. So EDM, another close example is Common Information Model in Europe, for example. But Common Information Model, CIM, is mostly focusing on high voltages, transmission basically, not for the distribution, which is 66 kV and below in India, for example. So the idea is that the EDM should be the Indianized version of whatever unique that we are. And then this is supposed to be a very modular framework, so that as your vision is to take this forward and take it along to the different geographies with very localized and customization themes basis regulatory and policy measures in the respective nations.
So no, this is very interesting, because I must confess, I didn't know that not a single distribution utility in the world today has a standard interoperable standards of an EDM that Abhishek is talking about. So this is something that is unique that India is attempting. And if you do it because of the various archetypes of distribution companies in India, our view is whatever India decides should actually be a great lesson for different kind of distribution companies all over the world. Because as you are very rightly saying, you can have any number of systems as long as the interoperable standards and formats are clearly defined. So I think this is really a great path-breaking work, and I really look forward to Indian Energy Stack finalizing within a month in time for ASM.
Yes, that's what we are trying to do, achieving. And then one more thing is the framework that is being developed now to find out where each of the utility is in its maturity journey, digital transformation maturity journey. So that's also is in pipeline. Yeah.
Great. So this is absolutely just the kind of work, and what he didn't say is that some of this digital twinning work in India is being done at a fraction of a cost that is being done in a lot of developed world. In some places in Jaipur, this was done at 10% of the cost of what very large companies in US are doing. So that's a low cost scalable solution which is also.
Thanks for reminding. So we did that in low voltage grid. Jaipur was up to 11 kV and above. And we did it from distribution transformer and below. And in fact, in the last 4 months now, the results are very much there to see. For example, the average restoration time in that area, the area where we did the digital twinning, the restoration time reduced by half. So from 60 minutes to 30 minutes and below 30 minutes. And then second, the number of faults also reduced. Why? Because we went from overhead to underground. So the double impact was there. And this is only one such impact, which is average restoration time reduction. Also, we are now attempting an OCC, Online Consumer Connect, which is AI driven, with the digital twin in the backdrop or the base of it. So as a consumer, you can simply log on to the portal, which is in the web domain, give your lat long and what is the quantum of electricity that you want to, connection, sanction load. And it will do the analysis basis the historical data, just like ChatGPT. And it's going to give you A, yes, feasibility, yes or no. B, what is the likely path from which the connection is to be given to you. So this is we call pre-feasibility.
Excellent.
So that is the second thing. And the third thing, of course, is about analytics and digital last mile connectivity analysis based upon the historical data and plan for the network modeling.
Thank you. So we heard from transmission from Arun, we have heard from distribution. Let's cover the generation side of clean technology on solar. We have Deepak, who's MD and CEO of Ciel Terre, who have done a lot of floating solar on multi-megawatt. Deepak, tell us, how are you using technology and AI in managing different aspects of construction, commissioning, and operation of your multi-megawatt floating solar? And what are your views in terms of the scale-up? That how can technology help in a multiple scale-up of floating solar? And within that, you may like to say, what are the lessons we can take through ISA to the rest of the world?
Too many questions.
Doesn't matter.
Thank you so much for having me here. Good evening, all. I think floating solar was a niche technology then. It was a curious state, and now it become a serious state of affair. And we were instrumental in setting up more than half a gigawatt of projects in India itself, and more than 2 gigawatt of projects in 32 countries, 5 continents. That's scaling up is purely, I'm just taking about the background, is how we enabled these technologies to come into picture, because floating means you're investing money in water. So you have to be absolutely sure about how you protect the asset for 25 years. That protection is completely enabled with technology. So you scale up the technology over a period of time. Then, as you rightly asked, the lessons learned, you upgrade the lessons learned. And that's how right now we come up to this situation. Coming back, the main challenge is the site challenges. You don't have a standard design for floating solar. Unlike modules, you have a standard watt peak you can put up across. It is straightforward, basic designs, and then you can put it. But this is a tailor-made design suite. You may have a wind, you may have waves, you may have water level variations, you may have underwater current. So you have all these things, and you only have just anchoring and mooring to hold these floating structures and this floating power plant. So how you designate, how you envisage a design suite is the biggest challenge. That's where we are, over a period of time, we were curtailing a lot of technology improvements into that. And I think we are partnering with many institutions from 2018 onwards, many entities from SECI to MNRE to ISI to all these organizations, and giving the know-hows and try to standardize and get a benchmark of this floating solar domain. And then the investors needs to have the confidence that investment has to come into that floating solar domain. So that is the first crux to that. Then second thing is that when you talk about a technology, we need to scale up, right? So in 2018, I was talking about 50 kilowatt, and then in 19, I was talking about 500 kilowatt, and now I'm talking about 500 megawatt. So that's the scale has, that's the scaling has happened that horizon. Now we are thinking about how we can ensure a optimized designs. This is important. That's a crutch, because India is price sensitive. So you have to compare. I mean, you have to fight with the ground mounts. You have to fight with the traditional renewable energy sectors, and then floating solar should not be expensive. So the capex has to be reduced. How you can reduce the capex? That's where the technology comes into picture. So traditionally, we have been using some sort of data, analytical data, historical data, and then we conceive with the mathematics and the physics involved in this marine equations, and then come with the safety factors, and then the consultants or the program writers will add more safety factor into that, and then when we design, we'll add one more layer of to it. So basically we are doing over engineering a tailored design suite, and that increases the capex. So here we can get into AI based IoT sensors. We can enable that sort of things. So what happens right now, you will able to undermine or underline the right data. You can correlate the extensions, the loads which is transferring. So we'll have a clear-cut idea of what kind of data you can conceive. And then once you conceive a design, you will not overdoing engineering. It's like you are just ensuring the right balance is there for this particular site. So 47 meter per second wind speed, you have a design suite against 39 meter per second. So there's a different kind of design suits you have to do it. So and then the digital twins you are having it. So when you go with this kind of applications and then correlate these simulations, this is how you will do is you are not over engineering. So we are getting a design suite that reduces the capex. Once you lower the capex, automatically you right now the PPAs can be sail through. That is one aspects, and that is what we are also doing. So we have introduced a number of simulations over a period of times, and being a French company, India, you always say qualities, you are overqualified, and then we need Indian market. So we completely made into Make in India, and we completely indigenous a model, and then however the crutch is that we use this kind of simulations and softwares, but we conceived, what we envisaged over a period of time. We have custom made a lab in India, in Bangalore, in Pune. I have set up that. It's the world's only lab which has talking about floating solar solutions and R&D of floating solar. We customize the machines, and then the machines has a lot of sensors, digital data. Then we recently we involved AI driven solutions, process solutions. So we are able to familiarize more drives, data simulations, and failure patterns, and it's giving us kind of trust and confidence in real time. Weathering, we say that word, real time weathering, we are doing that. So that's one way of doing it. And second is the anchoring and mooring also again until unless you have got so you may have the flexibility in mooring lines, you may have like a traditional mooring lines, but what sort of mooring line is needed, how much you can go down. So you talk about the EPC, you talk about developers, they need like a lowest cost, they need a cost driven products, and but again you need to have a quality. it will not last. Again, we are talking about floating and floating for 25 years. That's a key. Floating for 25 is the main thing. So these are the few aspects which we have taken it. And then now, right, you have got a lot of. I mean, maybe time permits. Maybe I will add one more thing. What we can bring here is kind of a standardizations. We can benchmark. We can benchmark a framework. We can do a kind of modeling. Third thing we can do is all about is like a vendors. We can give a marking ratings. Game cards to the vendors to do that. Centralized pooling of resources, and then getting these regulations and frameworks and monitoring it and following up and restructuring it. These are the few aspects which we can do. GCC can do it.
Thank you, Deepak. Of course, you mentioned important lessons for a technology that was experimental to now commercially viable of floating solar and the lot of AI and tech in modeling and others. Thank you. So Priya, you heard transmission, distribution, generation. As a financial investor, you get all these pitches all the time. Tell us a little bit from where you see, what are the lessons in terms of your portfolio of investments in technology in the clean energy space? And if you have to scale it up to global south, what will be your pointers as an investor?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Ashish, and thank you to ISA for having us here. It's a great event. So just for background, I run a institutionally backed climate tech fund. Essentially, we invest across the sectors of energy generation, material science, industrial decarbonization, essentially solar, mobility, batteries, energy storage. And I think for us, we see a few clear trends in this space, and where startups as the most agile and most nimble players in the sector can work with organizations like yourselves to really help optimize and help make things a lot more efficient in the entire transmission, generation, and the entire distribution process. So what we've seen is 2 or 3 key models. One is essentially what we were speaking about earlier about the project simulations. So in fact, we've just backed a company called EarthSync. The founder is here in the audience, which is a really interesting company around helping large CNI developers or CNI customers essentially manage their project IRRs through simulations. This is has elements of AI and machine learning, and the software is essentially designed to look at 15-second intervals, look at essentially the performance of these solar renewable assets, and also mapping essentially the statewide regulation. So every state has a different kind of policy framework as well. So software embeds all of that, and it's looking at offering energy trading as well as an integrated marketplace. So the entire product suite. So we see solutions like this as massively path-breaking, really sort of crucial for today's energy framework. The second area that we are really excited about and that we've seen perform quite well abroad and now is really taking action here in India is this whole energy storage, virtual energy storage and virtual power plants. Now it sounds, about 5 years ago, it would be a little bit far-fetched and long term, and we in fact backed a few companies that were a bit early for their time, back in 2021 or so. But now with kind of time of day tariffs becoming a lot more prevalent across different states, and the ability of the battery or the large utility scale battery to essentially be a digital brain of the grid and movements along the grid, I think there is a huge opportunity for startups to actually build that compute layer over these batteries and help these batteries communicate, the sort of energy needs, whether it's demand response or various others, across the grid framework. And so it's kind of taking it one step further beyond the microgrid, looking at kind of ways in which there's interconnectedness now between the generators, the consumers, etc., and then eventually leading to that kind of P2P framework that is so prevalent in California and other countries as well, where consumers can actually generate and then sort of trade within each other. So that's an area that we're really excited about, the virtual energy storage. And then the last area is, obviously, it's much more, I would say, private equity mid-market play, but looking at the general sort of installation of solar. So a widespread range of companies is moving into tier 2, tier 3 towns, looking at the sort of installation of solar, the financing, and how that kind of plays out across multiple smallholder, rural establishments, shops, etc. And that has, an element of it where I would say renewables really need to move much further inwards into the kind of beyond tier 1 and into much kind of, I would say smaller wattage warehouses, 5 megawatt establishments, etc. And a lot of startups that we see are actually moving in that space as well. But the key is really the digitization, the analytics, and we were actually part of a jury together last year where the GAP organization had organized essentially the Entice program, where about 15 to 20 companies had come in to try and pitch their solutions that were digitizing various grid applications that would eventually be piloted at the Jaipur Discom. So I think there's a big movement, I think, within startups, within the talent, kind of headspace within startups, who are actually looking to make big shifts in this industry, utilizing the technology tools at their disposal and helping that integration kind of take further, spread further and become much more widespread.
Thank you so much. I remember about this new age of solutions that are there in addition to the existing automation. I think just in the interest of time, I also want to emphasize what you heard from the panel, that be it AI products and digitization on transmission, distribution, clean energy, as well as a lot of new venture capital backed ideas that are coming up. India is a remarkable ecosystem that is building up, and our job as International Solar Alliance is to bring all elements together for AI products, policy, regulations, innovation ecosystem and financing, and present that as a need for the global south. Because I can tell you, when I go to Africa, Asia, Latin America, everybody has almost the same request. So please watch out this space, and please give a round of applause to the panel and India Energy Week and Jyotsna for organizing it. Thank you very much.